What up? It's Brian the Illustrator back to break down another vintage graphic for you guys. I did finally hear back from my client Shibe in Philadelphia about the Veteran Stadium graphic they wanted me to do. I've been waiting to do a photo into a graphic for you guys for a while. Stadiums are not my favorite thing to do because they're time consuming and they're kind of, they're labor intensive, but I love the end result every time. And so if I could do them all the time, I would, even though they take a while. But this one was fun. As long as it's not like a really modern stadium that has a lot of scaffolding on the outside. I'll show you some previous ones that I've done from some other clients in the past that are varying degrees of difficulty depending on how old or new the stadium is and kind of the layout of it. But I wanted to walk through things that I look for on a photo before I get going with a stadium graphic, and then take you through the one that I did here and kind of explain the process that I go through to kind of meet what the client had in mind. So hope you guys like this one. Again, if you like what I do and you want me to make any graphics for your company, you can get in touch with me at brianthomascrooksllc@gmail. This one is a claimed graphic. I'm making this one for a company called Shibe in Philadelphia, so this one's not for sale, but if you do want any wholesale graphics, you can get in touch with me at nifty50apparel@gmail, nifty50apparel. And then if you want to get in touch with me or follow the entire Nifty 50 line as it comes together, you can follow us and go to our website at nifty50apparel.com. All right, guys, let's get started. Let's talk about some of the stadiums I've done in the past. This one was for Streaker Sports. A bunch of these are for Streaker, one of my earlier clients. I've got a lot of my stuff at streakersports.com. But this one was for the Pasadena Bowl. When you build a graphic out of a stadium, the best thing to do is find something that has a lot of difference between light and dark. Strong shadow really makes a lot of the difference in how the overall thing is going to be presented. And so they wanted a stadium, they wanted a player kind of coming out of it. This one was a fairly easy build. This one was a little bit trickier. The Harvard Stadium, I like the layout of it. I like kind of the old sort of Coliseum look on the outside. I always try to experiment with text when I'm doing buildings and see if I can get them to kind of integrate into the graphic. I really should have added more shadow on the ground to kind of ground this one a little bit more, but one of the things you're going to notice is the way that I do the crowds in these is always kind of the same. So I'll break that down when I actually build this graphic, but this is another one of the stadiums I did for Streaker Sports. So I mentioned before, I like to do the classic stadiums instead of the newer ones. This is a newer stadium I did for Philly Goat. Newer stadiums have a lot of exposed scaffolding on the outside. They've got a lot of sort of, railings and all of these really detailed architectural elements that just take forever to illustrate. But in this one, I like sometimes to put a big caricature of the mascot, kind of plop him right down in the middle of the stadium. I think it's kind of a cool look. And so this one was built off of an old University of Iowa mascot that we have, and I just clipped that into a Philadelphia Eagles graphic and just dropped that right into the middle of the stadium there. This one was also for Streaker. If you guys have never seen the Yale Bowl, it is a cool stadium. Like, I've never been there, but it's kind of built into like an earthworks. It's like a big hill that they dug out in the middle of to put the stadium in. But this was a super easy one to do in comparison to the one that I did for the Eagles at the Link, because it's such a simpler architectural design. And again, you get that strong shadow and dark in there that kind of makes the whole thing come to life. This is another one for Streaker. This is Michie Stadium where Army plays. Again, strong light and dark. Plop that mascot right into the middle of it. Kind of built itself a little bit there, but you kind of getting the idea for how most of these come together, especially if they're the older stadiums with the kind of the brick solid exteriors. This is the last one that I wanted to show you guys. This is for Nudge Printing. Again, a more modern stadium. You see a lot more detail to the actual architecture of it. I've done some baseball stadiums and some domes as well, but since this one that I'm going to be building as a football graphic, I wanted to show you guys some previous football stadiums that I've done to kind of get a look for the overall sort of build and feel that these all have. So when I start off with any kind of a stadium graphic, I try to send over some options so that the client kind of has an idea of what different looks we're going to go with here. They specifically kind of keyed in on this one that I did for the Mitten State a while ago. They wanted a graphic to celebrate Michigan getting to 1,000 wins, and so as you see, I kind of integrated the type in there, sort of built a little box for the player to be in. But they like this player, they like the look of this graphic, and again, strong light and dark contrast is kind of key when you're doing any kind of a building. I feel like it just makes it a whole lot better. It kind of makes it a lot clearer to read. They also like some aspects of this one. They wanted to keep the Go Birds as the tagline there. They sort of like the layout of this and the overall look of it. And they said they did want, a big player kind of on the field. And so they liked some aspects of this one as well. And so I had this one dropped in there as another reference point for myself. And here's the actual photo that we're going to be using here. Stadiums can be tricky because you have to try to line it up for not only a good image to work off of, but also if you're going to put a character in it, it has to be kind of at a suitable angle for that. And so it took me a little while to find one. Stadium has not been around for a while. A lot of the pictures are also when it was set up for baseball, which wouldn't really work for this graphic at all. Then you also want to take out some extraneous things. There's landscaping, there's people, there's flagpoles. There's a lot of things that kind of come with a stadium that don't necessarily work for the graphic, aren't going to make it any easier or better to read, but just kind of complicate things. And when it's on a big concrete slab like that, it can go on forever. How far into the parking lot do you go? And so you want to kind of develop an eye for what you want to do with your base image. Then I just took it into Photoshop, cut out all the extra stuff, so I was left with just an isolated image of the stadium itself. Let's go ahead and speed things up and get this trace started. One thing that can be tricky with any kind of a building, especially if you're looking for like that high light and dark contrast part, is figuring out where you're going to put your lines and where you're not. It's not supposed to be cartoony looking. It's all built out of one pretty solid edifice, and so you have to kind of think about what you want to do in terms of where you're going to separate things. And then also repetition really matters. This shape I'm doing here is really tedious, but I'm modifying it a tiny bit each time I do it so that it looks like the light is really working around the building. I do the same thing here. Go down a little bit further each time, keep the spacing consistent, and that way you're building in the shadow and it's going to look right, for where the sun is actually hitting the building. This section gave me headaches. Cutting out the landscaping is kind of tricky to figure out what you're doing and where things should be. And you see I keep on kind of looking back at it. I glance at it over and over again to see, did I do it right? Is that going to work right when I go to make this into a vector? That sort of stuff is just kind of, comes with doing it enough times to trust yourself and understand that you have cut it out right, even though it might look and feel a little bit wonky when it's just the outline part. If I needed to fix it, I could have, but this one did work out. I did get it right, and it worked out good. You're going to see in the end result here. And again, repetition is key here. This takes a while to do. There's no really fast way to speed it up or to automate it. You just have to kind of do the exact same shape over and over and over again, making the smallest adjustments for where the light is hitting things. And that is how you wind up with a realistic looking illustration of a building where it doesn't look like it's, kind of thrown together or manufactured. It takes time. Like I said, stadium graphics always take time. At least this one's a solid edifice without a whole lot of, scaffolding on the outside. This is kind of the only area that really takes some time to do on this one, but, it pays off to get this part right. I've done seating two different ways. There's times I've done it where I, have the individual little sections of seats in there, where I go and, kind of carve out each little area. There's times I do it like this where it's just solid. I think this looks better. It looks a lot less broken up and less chunky unless you have really well-defined seating areas. I just do it as a big solid slab like that. Now we're going to add in the player. Ordinarily, I would just make a new player for this building, but they really liked this one. They wanted me to use the same one. I know there's probably better ways to do this with masking and stuff like that. It didn't make sense for me to take the time to sort of sort through the way to do it that way. I'm going to modify this one a whole lot because this was obviously a Michigan player. Jerseys are very different. I have a source image of a player from the right era. That's Ron Jaworski off to the right side there. What up, Jaws? But I wanted to make sure I got everything correct. And at this point, I'm like, oh shit, I built this as a 2-color instead of as a 3rd-color option. So I had to go and fix a lot of areas to make it with a black background because I'm doing this on green, and it wouldn't really work at all, with a home jersey on green. The whole chest just kind of vanishes. So I had to do a lot of fixes. But again, fidelity to the actual jersey design is kind of what we're going for here. And so, as you see, I take some time to make sure the stripes are right, the pants look right. That helmet I wind up changing in a set because I did not like how I did it the first time. I tried to put the player on there, the angle wasn't right, and I said, okay, I'll figure this one out. But this is the kind of stuff that does take a little bit of extra time, but when you do it, it winds up making it look a whole lot better. So at this point, the player is done. They did request the number 31 on the jersey instead of the original 7. So in a second, I'm going to show you what I do to get that done in Photoshop. I don't do a ton of work in Photoshop unless I'm doing like a sketch. And then in this case, it's a whole lot easier to skew things to fit properly on a non-flat surface if you do it in Photoshop. So I'll take you through my steps on that and slow things down a little bit, and then we'll speed things back up to finish out the rest of this graphic. Anytime I have to add anything to a graphic that needs to kind of mold around a shape or kind of bend to fit anything, I do that part in Photoshop. It's just way faster to do it there. This is one of the athletic typefaces that I have. This is sports jersey. I've got a bunch of them that kind of all work for this, but what I'm going to do is drop that player right into Photoshop in here. That way it's going to be the same size. I'm not going to resize him at all. Take the number, do the same thing, drop that also into Photoshop. And then with the distort, I'm just going to distort it and kind of mess around with it until it lays flat. You can skew stuff in Illustrator. It doesn't have the same sort of versatility as this does. And because I'm going to trace this anyway when it's all done, it doesn't need to be, a vector or anything. I'm just going to drop this right on top, take that into the graphic in Illustrator and add that in. And this is just, it's the best way that I have found to do this. I know that you can use the warp tool in Illustrator and do some neat things. Obviously, I warp type and stuff like that. As far as I'm concerned, this is so much faster and so much easier and gives me the versatility that I need to have it have the right look. So, I mess around with it a little bit, just kind of eyeball it. There's not a right or wrong here, but I just want it to look about right as to how it would be with the angle of his body and the jersey. And then we're going to take that, drop it right back on top, and I will speed things back up here for the rest of this trace. Going to finish things off with the text here. This typeface is called Cat's Pajamas. I like it because it's tall and skinny for an athletic typeface. Most of them are kind of big and chunky. This one is really kind of taller and thinner. I don't use it all that often, but for this application it fits really well. The client wanted the Go Birds as the secondary type like it was in the one that I did for the link earlier that I showed. So that part was pretty easy. Just kind of, there was a bunch of different typefaces that I played around with. I went with Retro Mintho, which is one of my favorites for this kind of thing as well. Stars, again, as a vintage designer, can be your best friend. I didn't like them on that same warp, and so the stars stay flat. The rest of the text warps like it is kind of an extension of the curve behind the stadium. I modify these letter forms quite a bit. I love this typeface, but it gets a little bit too overdone every once in a while, and so I want to simplify some things down, and we're just about done with this graphic. I want to pause for a second and talk about the way that I do crowds. I have tried these a bunch of different ways to kind of indicate the crowd. I saw this look on a pennant, I think for Camp Randall Stadium up in Wisconsin a long time ago, and it just works great for this kind of application to imply the crowd without going insane trying to think about how to draw individual people. So I'm going to zoom in here in a little bit and kind of show you, but I just replicate this exact same one whenever I do stadiums. It keeps the scale correct. Ordinarily, I draw things at a much bigger scale off on the side of the artboard. This is like one of the very few things you're going to see me do at this size, because at this scale, it fits perfectly at, size on a shirt. I've done them before. I tried to do it big, and the dots get way too small, and it just kind of looks messy. So I take that exact same crowd that I have in the Harvard graphic, I drop it in here, and then what you're going to see me do is move each individual little piece around so that I fill the space. This takes a pretty long time to do, but it is great. Like it every time I do it, it really does bring this graphic to life. It finishes everything off, and it's the best way that I found to do crowds for stadium graphics, and that's always the last step that I'm going to do on a stadium. Now, I could just mask this, like drop it in there and just mask it. I don't want to do that because I don't want to have any of them get cut off. I want the whole dot to show on all of these, and so I'm very conscious of my edges and making sure that none of them run into the black part of the edge, that they all fit nicely inside of that space. Again, it takes a while to go and do each one of these individually and move them to fill the space, but boy, every time I do it, it really does add that last nice finishing touch to a stadium graphic. And this is all done. You're going to notice that when you look at the thumbnail for this video, there's a couple of changes. The vet and Go Birds are in white now. The stadium itself is in gray. I felt like when I had it this way, it sort of vanished a little bit. The text vanished a little bit and got a little bit muddy on the Kelly green, so I flipped that a little bit. But this is ready to be sent off to my client for approval. Hopefully it comes back with no changes, but if changes have to happen, that's, par for the course. All right, so that one's all done. Again, this one is for Shibe in Philadelphia. If you want to check out their assortment, they have some really great graphics there at ShibeVintageSports.com. That's SHIBE. I'm hopefully going to get some more work with them coming up soon. I've done, this is my second graphic for them. I did one for Dick Allen, who went into the Hall of Fame for the Phillies about a month ago. So that one I think is probably on their website right now, but stay tuned for hopefully some more for them. I'll do some more photo graphics. There's one that I'm going to post hopefully tonight or tomorrow. That is a Seattle Supersonics bootleg that has some photo elements in it, and the first nature element I'm going to do for you guys, Mount Rainier, is part of that graphic. And so if I have time to tonight, I'll get that one edited and posted. But again, to remind you guys, if you want me to make any graphics for your company, you can get in touch with me at BrianThomasCrooksLLC@gmail. This one is not part of the Nifty 50 collection since this is already sold to Shibe. But if you do want me to make any local graphics for you, for your company, you can get in touch with me at Nifty50Apparel@gmail. Also, if you want any graphics that we do on wholesale for your shop, you can get at me there. If you want to follow me on Instagram and see a whole bunch of my other graphics, my Instagram handle is Brian_the_illustrator. Tons and tons of stuff there. Way more than I can, make videos for that I'm going to try to keep up with. But if you want to get kind of a feel for all of my graphics, you can find them there. And I hope to see you guys next time.